For all the latest reviews, interviews, and everything entertainment in Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, and Telugu, subscribe to Film Companion South now.
Hello and welcome to Film Companion South. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Karthik Subbaraj's Mahaan, which stars Vikram, Dhruv Vikram, Simran, Bobby Simha, Sanant, and a number of others. Mahaan is about ironies. It is about the irony of a man from a Gandhian family becoming a liquor baron. It is about a man from the same Gandhian family becoming a psychotic cop, and we're left wondering who's worse. The first half lies in that not great but not bad zone. It's like it's not special enough to say, oh wow, but then it's kind of watchable. Is the part where Vikram becomes that liquor baron that I mentioned. One thing I found really tiresome was the name of Gandhi coming up every single time on almost every single line. In fact, Vikram's name is Gandhi. And the plot gets going when this Gandhian named Gandhi, when his wife Simran takes off on a trip with their son. And this Gandhian, this Ambi, gets a chance to unleash his inner Remo. It's his 40th birthday. Imagine 40 years of repression. It all bursts out like lava. That's what happens. On that particular day, he goes to a bar. He meets this character played by Sanant. And it turns out that Sanant's father, played by Bobby Simha, who's really quite wonderful, is an old friend of this guy, of Gandhi. So Gandhi has a great time, but when he returns home, he's done the ultimate sin because he's that Gandhian family guy and he's drunk and he's done all sorts of bad things. So his wife takes their son and she leaves. And so Sanant and Bobby Simha become Vikram's surrogate family. They also become a family in the sense of the Corleone family in the Godfather movies, because they become the liquor barons of the city. So far so good, or so far so average, but the rest of the first half suffers from one major structural problem that the interval creates in our films. You have to introduce the Dhruv Vikram character at the interval point, right? So that's when he makes his grand appearance. What do you do till then? So we get a series of very similar looking scenes set against the liquor business. We get an enemy and he is easily disposed of. We get another enemy and he too is easily disposed of. There is very little emotional depth. Things happen so easily and so smoothly for Vikram and gang that it is very hard to get into that story. And again, why? Because there is not much of a story beyond the fact that we are now waiting for the Dhruv Vikram character to appear, and that's going to happen only at interval point. So the stakes are practically non-existent, but when Dhruv makes his appearance, it's a terrific scene and it happens during a dance during a festival. I told you the first half doesn't have much emotional depth, right? And that's actually both a negative and a positive. It's a negative because our involvement with the film decreases, but from a pure screenwriting point of view, I was very impressed because Karthik manages to do something few others would do. He could easily show Vikram brooding or yearning for his lost family. He doesn't do that. Vikram just puts the family out of his mind, and then he focuses his mind on business and he just moves on. But when the Dhruv Vikram character enters, then the emotional stakes begin to slowly appear. The things that were missing in the first half, the emotion that was missing in the first half, finally makes an appearance. Karthik usually likes to keep us guessing about people, but he instantly tells us who this Dhruv Vikram character is and what he's going to do, and the second half really worked for me. Dhruv Vikram character, he's fantastically psycho, and the very fact that we don't see him in the movie for a long stretch, the fact that we don't see him growing up, or we don't see what he feels towards his father or whatever it is, it adds to the suddenness of his appearance. He's like a bat out of hell. And one by one, as I said, the emotional angles start appearing. There's a fantastic plot point where Vikram has a secret that he cannot tell even his closest friends. There's another fantastic scene where someone close, we've grown close to, someone dies, and Vikram is literally left standing between two fallen sons. The best thing Karthik has done in Mahaan is write a great part for Vikram, which the actor deserves but hasn't had in a long time. Vikram does the big hero scenes beautifully, but look at the pauses he gives to Bobby Simha before replying to him when they both are on a kind of bridge and the rest of the gang is celebrating. Or look at him at that wonderful scene where there is a beggar and who's giving him advice. And the way Vikram is sitting, almost crunched up together, the way his legs are, the way his hands are, the way he speaks, everything just suggests that umbiness that is still within him. Whereas in that earlier scene with Bobby Simha, he had become Remo. If nothing else, Mahaan will be remembered as Vikram's comeback, and he is simply spectacular in this film, especially in the second half when his character grows older. But as always in a Karthik Subbaraj movie, he compensates with so many riches, other kinds of things. He uses playing cards as chapter titles, and then he gives us a dog named Joker. An early plot point when these characters are all still kids, that is Vikram and Bobby Simha and all are still kids, it has a plot point about the betrayal from a close friend, and the same plot point and the same lines are echoed much later when Bobby Simha and Vikram are grown up and towards the end of the film. There's also this really surreal sequence where Bobby Simha, who is a Christian, he rediscovers Christ, and then much later in the film he calls Vikram Devadutan, and then much later in the film we get a scene where three tube lights light up behind the frame that Vikram is in, and he looks like Christ on a cross. I think all of this is great fodder for decoding, but it is also very interesting to see how this director's career is evolving. And I don't just mean in the use of the camera, which is not as flamboyant as it was in Jagame Tandram. Now, Jagame Tandram, of course, was Karthik's last film, and it was about the Sri Lankan Tamils, and somehow we expanded it to the global refugee crisis. In Mahaan, which is thankfully a much more coherent film than Jagame Tandram, he dives into Gandhism and Gandhi's quote about freedom isn't really freedom until it also includes the freedom to make mistakes. And with these two films, Jagame Tandram and Mahaan, Karthik seems to have started on a new chapter in his filmography. Now, Pizza and Jigar Tanda are movies that introduced us to Karthik Subbaraj, and I love those films because they fit so perfectly into Karthik's mode of storytelling in the way that he likes to pull the rug out from under our feet, and with all his narrative tricks and everything, those two films fit so perfectly there. You could probably also include Peta on that list. The revelation about the Vijay Sethupathi character is one of my favorite tricks in a Karthik Subbaraj film. Iravi and Mercury were more messagey and they were more complicated films in the sense that Iravi was a drama and Mercury was a thriller or horror movie, whatever you want to call it. But under the surface, there was a lot going on. And now he's in this Jagame Tandram Mahaan mode. His ambitions have become bigger and his messages have become more obvious. And the form, especially the screenplay, has become much more sprawling in the sense that these are not contained films. They have too much intent and they have too much content. So I'm going to end my Mahaan review by taking a couple of passages from my Jagame Tandram review. The first one is this: things get much better in the last third of the film because it gets more emotional and we are more invested in the proceedings. Overall, we get the feeling of watching a not bad generic drama. 2, you're torn between the fact that someone has found a very interesting way to make message movies, even though the individual movies may not work themselves, by putting these messages into things like genre containers, but at the same time, the movies don't work as well as they should. So that's it about Mahaan. If you like this video, do subscribe to Film Companion South, and I'll see you soon at the movies.